Hey guys, what's going on and welcome back to the Flora YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about rod bearings. And in my buyer's guide video I did a few weeks ago, I'll link that up here. Go check it out if you're looking to buy an E92. I spoke about how I got the rod bearings done on my car. Now I was going to do a video talking about what happened, etc. But then I thought, why not just include the video that Redish Motorsport sent me when my car was done? Now I can't recommend Redish Motorsport enough. The whole team were fantastic. They provided a great service with videos on the car, pictures and WhatsApp chat, everything. They were fantastic. So if you need to get your rod bearings done, go and check them out. So today we're going to watch the video that they produced on my car. Now stay to the end because we do a comparison of the copper bearings versus the aluminium bearings from the LCI cars. Right, let's get into it.
Here we've got an E92 M3 in with us at Redish Motorsport for Conrod bearing replacement as a preventative measure. Now this is a 2007, so November 2007 build with 57,000 miles on the car, and it's also a manual transmission, as we can see here. We've got the engine already taken apart, so that's the front suspension, the front steering rack, the front subframe, all disconnected from the car. We've got our special tools on, which is effectively a subframe that we purchased and basically chopped the middle out of. So this is what we call our special tool subframe. The customer subframe comes off of the car and gets put to one side, and we put our one on, which means the engine is supported safely on its normal sort of dispersing its energy in a normal position into the chassis legs. It leaves the engine bay completely clear. We don't need to go up into the engine bay to take the airbox off or use an engine load leveler or a crane or anything like that. And now we're just doing the plastic gauge measurements on this journal here, which is actually cylinder number 8, which goes on to the very rearward part of bank 2, which is over on the passenger side. So here is a Conrod, which you might see goes up towards the piston, up inside the engine. And then this is the crankshaft, and this is one of the journals, which is what the Conrod and the Conrod bearings run on. Here's one that's pre-assembled fully. So you've got a rod and then a cap. The cap is the piece that comes off once you undo these bolts, which are the Conrod bolts. And that's what we're looking at the opposite here. So that's where the cap and the rod bolts would go into. And they've got numbers on them, so they match up perfectly. And you can see once they're tightened up, you can almost not even see the join. And that's because there's a sintered connection. What we've done is taken this one off, and technician Darren has laid a section of plastic gauge over the new bearing, and we've put that up onto the journal, carried out a torque process to squash the plastic gauge, which is a predetermined size thickness or piece of plastic, and then it gives a spread. Once we unbolt that and take the cap and the Conrod and the bolts away, it gives a spread up here, and we're just going to measure that now with a card, which is the plastic gauge card, which has got all different sizes on it, and we're going to just see which version it's closest to. So that one there is 0.050. That looks quite good. If we moved it over to a 3/8, I'd say it's a bit too, it's not in line, that's a bit thicker than that. And if we went over the other side, it's definitely smaller than a 3/8. Sorry, I read that upside down. That's a 6.3 and 3/8, those don't line up, whereas a 5.0 is about the closest we're going to get to. So we would call that a 0.050 of millimeters. That's the gap between the Conrod bearings and the crankshaft journal, which is ideal. That's what we're looking for and what we normally do achieve with the ACL Conrod bearing. So we'll carry on, clean that plastic gauge off now, then lubricate the new bearing and the journal, and then put that back together, carry out the torque procedure with the BMW bolts, which has to happen 3 times because they're stretch bolts, and then effectively mark that one as complete, which is why the other ones have got green paint on the end, because that tells us that we're complete. We don't need to go back into that area. And then there'll just be one more to do later on, and that will complete the Conrod bearings on your E92 M3. And we've already got one of these videos on our YouTube channel, which we did in the summer of 2019 from memory. It's quite a popular video. It's also a white E92 M3. From memory, it was a 2011, and it was a later car that used the later style bearings. Now, sometime in 2010, earlier, more probably sort of spring 2010, the general consensus is that the Conrod bearings were changed from a copper and lead material to a aluminium and tin makeup. And that's mainly due to EU legislation saying that manufacturers had to take out lots more lead content from the production of vehicles. It wasn't any change in the bearing construction for clearance issues. The clearances are still the same from old versus new. But those engines, the later bearings, still can suffer with issues. And in the video previously that I talk about, it showed a 30-minute video of how we did the Conrod bearings from start to finish, including the time lapse of changing the bearings and also stripping and rebuilding. This video is basically to show the earlier style bearings that were in production from 2007 to somewhere around about spring 2010. And these bearings have got a part number of 088 and 089, and they are made up of copper and lead, so they're a lot softer material, and they do visually wear in a slightly different way. It's arguable whether they're actually any worse or any better than the later ones, but this is just an underside video showing that we've just effectively finished the Conrod bearing set on this car, and from that we've used, on this particular car, the customer opted for ACL Conrod bearings and BMW bolts, and this is just showing the rough makeup of the engine. So the crankshaft goes across from front to back, and then you've got Conrods which obviously wrap around the crankshaft journal, and the Conrod bolts there. The green heads mean that we've painted them. That's basically that we've painted, torqued those in the 3-stage manner that BMW you have to adhere to, because they're stretch bolts, and then they're paint marked. So now just going over to the bench just to show you the bearings that we've taken out of this engine. Now these aren't particularly bad, there's nothing hugely wrong with them, apart from they're obviously got some wear patterns on them, especially number 6. This is cylinder 6, and as you'll see, the uppers, so the upper is anything identified by a U, L identifies it as a lower. So the upper bearings always get the harder ride, shall we say, because they are getting a lot more force on the downward stroke when the combustion cycle actually happens. The piston is being pushed down onto the Conrod pushes down onto the bearing. The bearing should never touch the crankshaft journal, but effectively there is more wear in that upper bearing. They float on a film of oil, and that film of oil should be anywhere from sort of 0.025 up to 0.076 of a millimetre. The optimum clearance that we commonly see is 0.038 from the BMW bearings, sometimes between 0.38 and 0.50. Sometimes with ACLs you normally see closer to the 5 zeros on a good set, when there's no problems with bearings, no problems with crankshafts, journals, no problems with Conrods themselves. So looking at these ones a little bit closer, you can see when we talk about copper and lead as a bearing material, you can see that in this bearing. For example, let's take number 1. So the lower bearing, 1L, as in cylinder number 1, lower, that is a grey material all the way through, no real colour changes, a little bit darker in the middle, but there isn't actually any great problems or any wear patches on there. Whereas you go through to the upper bearing, and then we've got this sort of yellowy beige sort of colour material, and there's a little bit of a line going across there where you can definitely see from the grey to this colour, and then that is present all the way around nearly to the edge of this one. Now that will be showing basically what the lead material is in the bearing, and then when you look closer you can see the copper, which is present in a high mark in there and a slightly smaller mark in just there, and that is what you're seeing there is the copper material. So the copper is underneath the lead, and the lead is underneath, or whatever this top original coating is, and effectively the copper is the lower part of the material. Once you get to a real bad stage, I'll show you, actually I'll just add into the video about now what a really bad one looks like. Here's an example of how bad the bearings really get. This is an S65 bearing that we took out of an engine a few months back. All of it is showing as nearly all pure copper, completely worn, and so much to the point where actually the bearing has started delaminating all down the side there, and also in the main central section. If I zoom in and focus the camera, you can see how much material is missing, and naturally all that material had not only gone into the oil system but also had been dragged against the crankshaft journal, so naturally it caused damage to the crankshaft journal. So that isn't actually as bad as they get. They can get so bad where the tabs actually they contract so much due to heat and like a thermal runaway reaction where they narrow, they put stress on the tabs, the wear, and then effectively they slip and then become a spinning crankshaft Conrod bearing. I've got a couple of pictures here which I'll put in to show you how bad the journals can be on a spun bearing. But this here is actually not a spun bearing, but it is definitely damaged enough to warrant a new crankshaft, because the crankshaft had become scored and scratched, and that's just a little example of what they can become when they get really, really bad. So from that one you could see that the copper was extreme all on that bearing material, and it had broken up into certain pieces. So that's effectively the last layer before really things start going wrong. And you can see this car here, for example, with 57,000 miles on, it's not a huge amount of mileage, on an 07, has shown quite a lot of wear. These copper markings haven't caused any damage to the Conrod journal itself. The journals have all checked out perfectly fine. They're not scratched, they're not marred, they're still nice and polished and reflective, but they definitely have shown some bad wear. And number 6 was actually a worrying part, because there's a heavy, a longer stretch of copper shown, and also a darker type of copper, which tells you that it's had a lot more heat. It's had certainly a harsher ride than certainly the counterpart, which would have been cylinder number 2. It would have been running number 2 and number 6 run on the same journal, for example. And there's actually even like a green marking in there, isn't there? So it's had some strange wear on that one there. But great to see that these are now being taken out of the engine. They're not going to give the engine, or the crankshaft in particular, any more problems or any more risk. These bearings are going to go obviously to the customer. He can use those as he wishes to pass on to the next owner to show that they've been done, for example. And this video is purely to show the sort of outcome, a common outcome of the early style bearings fitted on the E92s and E93 M3s from 2007 to 2010, the 088, the 089 original style Conrod bearings, which are made up of a mainly copper and lead material.
Right, so there we have it. Again, fantastic service by Redish Motorsport. I highly recommend them. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe to the channel. New videos come out at 6 PM every Sunday. We'll catch you in the next one.